I know who you are, Sarah whispered against Marcus Thorne's mouth. I remember everything. His body went rigid beneath her. Those careful hands that had fed her soup and steadied her through physical therapy now frozen on her waist. In his eyes, she watched love collapse into terror. Sarah. You hit me with your car. Her voice was steady, clinical, nothing like the grateful patient he'd nursed back to health. Nothing like the woman who'd said yes to his proposal 3 hours ago. October 7th. Then, you were driving 90 on Riverside Boulevard. He pulled away, sheet tangling around his legs, and she saw it. The guilt he'd carried like a second skin finally exposed. But there was something else too. Something that looked almost like relief. I thought. His voice cracked. I thought you'd never remember. I thought I could just love you enough that it wouldn't matter. Did you mean to hit me, Marcus? The question hung between them like a blade. But it was the wrong question, Sarah realized, watching his face crumble. Because she'd been investigating the wrong man all along. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because this story takes turns you won't see coming. Trust me, you'll want to know how this ends. Now let's go back to where it all began. 6 months earlier, the rain had fallen like a curtain over the city of Ashford Bay, turning the streets into black mirrors that reflected nothing but darkness. Marcus Thorne's hands gripped the steering wheel of his Aston Martin, knuckles white, phone buzzing incessantly in the cup holder. 15 missed calls from his business partner, Elias Crane. 12 text messages, each more urgent than the last. We need to talk. Now. The journalist is getting too close. Marcus, if you don't answer, I'm handling this my way. But Marcus had been driving for hours, trying to clear his head, trying to understand how the company he'd built from nothing, Thorne Industries, the tech empire that had made him a billionaire by 35, had become something he no longer recognized. The offshore accounts Elias kept mentioning. The encrypted files that appeared and disappeared from their servers. The investors who spoke in coded language about creative accounting. He'd been so focused on innovation, on changing the world with quantum computing technology, that he'd let Elias handle the business side. His oldest friend. The man who'd been there since their college days. Working out of a garage. How had he missed it? The phone buzzed again. This time, a voice message. Marcus pressed play, and Elias's voice filled the car, smooth, controlled, but with an edge that made Marcus's stomach turn. She's following you right now, Marcus. The journalist. Sarah Delacroix. She thinks you're the one behind the embezzlement. She's been tracking you for 3 weeks, and tonight she's going to try to corner you. I'm sorry, brother, but you need to know. If she publishes what she thinks she knows, we're both finished. Drive careful in this rain. Marcus's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. There. Headlights. Staying exactly 3 car lengths behind, through every turn he'd made for the last 20 minutes. His heart hammered. He pressed the accelerator, water spraying up from his tires. The speedometer climbed, 70, 80, 90. The lights behind him matched his speed. Then everything happened at once. A figure stepped into the road, not from the sidewalk, but from between parked cars, as if materializing from the rain itself. Dark jacket. No umbrella. Moving deliberately into his path. Marcus slammed the brakes, but the wet road betrayed him. The car hydroplaned, spinning, and he felt the sickening impact, soft human wrong, before the Aston Martin crashed into a light post with a sound like the world ending. For a moment, there was only the hiss of the rain and the ticking of the cooling engine. Then Marcus stumbled out, legs barely holding him, and saw her. She lay crumpled on the asphalt, rain washing blood from a gash on her temple. Her phone shattered beside her, its screen still glowing with a photo. His photo, taken from a distance, date stamped and annotated with notes he couldn't read from where he stood. No, no, no. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, fingers finding the pulse at her throat. Weak, but there. Stay with me. Please stay with me. Her eyes fluttered open, gray like storm clouds, and focused on his face with an intensity that pierced through his panic. I know. She whispered, blood on her lips. I know what you. Then her eyes rolled back, and she was gone. But not dead. Not dead. Marcus's phone was in his hand, 911 already dialing, when he noticed something that would haunt him for months to come. The skid marks on the road. 2 sets. His car. And another vehicle behind him that had stopped just short of the scene and was now reversing, disappearing into the rain without its lights on. Someone had been chasing him. Or chasing her. Sarah woke 3 days later with no idea who she was. Marcus stood beside her hospital bed when her eyes opened. Those gray eyes now cloudless, empty of recognition, of accusation, of everything except confusion and fear. "Where am I?" she asked, voice rough from the breathing tube they'd removed that morning. The doctor, a kind woman named Dr. Reeves, stepped forward with a gentle smile. "You're at Ashford Memorial. You were in an accident. You have a severe concussion and some memory loss, but you're going to be fine." Memory loss? Sarah's hand went to the bandage wrapped around her head. I can't remember." Panic rising. "What's my name?" Dr. Reeves glanced at Marcus, who stood frozen by the window, guilt eating him alive from the inside out. They'd found no ID on her. Her phone was destroyed. No one had reported her missing. It was as if she'd been a ghost before he'd hit her. But Marcus had hired investigators. Had paid for every test, every scan, every specialist. And he'd learned her name from the partial data recovered from her shattered phone. Sarah Delacroix, freelance investigative journalist, 29 years old, no family listed in emergency contacts. A woman who'd been investigating him. "Your name is Sarah," Marcus heard himself say, moving closer. "Sarah Delacroix. I'm Marcus Thorne and I'm the one who hit you. I'm so sorry. I'm going to make this right. Whatever it takes." Over the following weeks, Marcus kept his word with an almost religious devotion. He moved her into the private recovery wing of his penthouse. A space that had been his mother's before she passed, filled with soft light and softer surfaces. He hired Dr. Reeves as her personal physician, and a nurse named Carmen who stayed around the clock. He brought in physical therapists, neurologists, specialists who charged fees that would bankrupt most people. And he visited. Every single day. At first, Sarah flinched when he entered the room. Some instinct deeper than memory warning her. But Marcus never pushed. He would sit in the chair by the window and talk. About the weather, about books, about nothing important. Until she relaxed. "Why are you doing this?" she asked one afternoon. 2 weeks after the accident. Rain streaked the floor-to-ceiling windows. And she was sitting up for the first time, wearing a soft gray sweater he'd bought because it matched her eyes. Marcus looked at her, really looked, and saw not the journalist who'd been hunting him, but a woman who'd lost everything and was trying to rebuild herself from fragments. "Because it was my fault. And because..." He hesitated. "Because I don't think you have anyone else." That was the day something shifted between them. Sarah began to ask him questions. Not about the accident, which the doctors said might never come back, but about herself. Who had she been? What did she like? Marcus worked with the investigators carefully, feeding her information that was true but stripped of context. She was a writer. She loved old films and strong coffee. She had an apartment in the arts district, which Marcus had packed up and put in storage, saving everything that might help her remember. What he didn't tell her. She'd been tracking financial crimes. That her apartment had been broken into the night after the accident. Her computer and all her backup drives stolen. That someone was very interested in making sure she never remembered what she'd been investigating. And he didn't tell her about the letters. They'd started arriving at his office 3 weeks after the accident. Plain envelopes, no return address, always hand-delivered to reception when no cameras were watching. She's better off not remembering. Let sleeping dogs lie, Thorne. Your partner sends his regards. Elias. Marcus hadn't spoken to Elias since the accident. Hadn't answered his calls or returned his messages. Because Marcus had finally looked at the company's books, really looked, and had seen the scope of what his oldest friend had been doing. Embezzling millions, creating false accounts, bribing officials, and framing everything to look like it came from Marcus himself. The journalist hadn't been wrong to investigate Thorne Industries. She'd just been investigating the wrong Thorne. But as weeks turned into months, something unexpected happened. Something Marcus hadn't planned for and couldn't control. He fell in love. It started small. The way Sarah tilted her head when she was thinking. How she'd curl up in the window seat with a book and lose herself for hours. the questions she asked about philosophy and art, and whether people could really change. The way she laughed, sudden and bright, when he told her about the time he'd accidentally bid 10 million on a painting he thought was worthless at a charity auction. "You're different than I expected," she said one evening. They were having dinner on the penthouse terrace. The city spread below them like a field of stars. She was walking now without help, her memory still gone but her spirit returning, fierce and curious. "Different how?" Marcus asked, setting down his wine glass. "I don't know. When I try to imagine the kind of person who becomes a billionaire tech CEO, I picture someone cold, calculating. But you're..." She searched for the word, firelight dancing in her eyes. "You're kind." Marcus felt the guilt like a physical weight. "Sarah, I know what you're going to say. That you hit me with your car, so kindness is the least you can do. But it's more than that." She reached across the table, her hand covering his. "You visit me every day. You read to me when I have headaches. You remember that I hate roses but love peonies. That's not guilt, Marcus. That's care." He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers, and felt the world narrow to just this. Her touch, her trust, the terrible weight of his secrets. "What if?" he started, then stopped. "What if you remembered and everything changed?" Sarah smiled. "Sad and beautiful. Then we'd figure it out. Together." That night, Marcus lay awake in his bedroom, listening to Sarah breathe in the room next door, and made a decision. He would tell her everything. The investigation, Elias's crimes, the fact that someone had been chasing them both that night. She deserved the truth, even if it meant losing her. But before he could, she kissed him. It happened the next evening. In the library where they'd fallen into the habit of reading together. Sarah looked up from her book, studied his face with that intense focus she had, and said, "I think I'm falling in love with you. Is that crazy?" "Sarah." Marcus set down his book, heart hammering. "You don't know." "I know enough." She moved closer, kneeling beside his chair. "I know you're a good man who made a mistake and has spent months trying to fix it. I know you make me feel safe and seen and more like myself than I have since I woke up with no memory. I know that when you look at me, I feel like I'm someone worth looking at." "You are," Marcus whispered, cupping her face. "You're extraordinary." When their lips met, it felt like the beginning of something inevitable and the end of something terrible, all at once. The weeks that followed were a dream Marcus didn't deserve. They fell into a rhythm of quiet domesticity that felt stolen, precious. Morning coffee on the terrace. Long walks through the city where no one recognized them. Evenings spent cooking together. Sarah discovering she had a talent for it. Marcus discovering he was hopeless but she didn't mind. He told himself he'd confess. Tomorrow. Next week. When she was stronger. But the truth was Marcus was a coward. Because loving Sarah who didn't remember was easier than facing Sarah who might hate him. Then 3 months after that first kiss Marcus proposed. It wasn't planned. They were in the penthouse garden he'd had installed on the roof, surrounded by the peonies she loved, and Sarah was laughing at something ridiculous he'd said, and the words just came out. "Marry me." She stopped laughing. "What?" Marcus dropped to one knee, no ring yet but his heart in his throat. "Marry me, Sarah. I know it's fast, I know you're still recovering, but I love you. I love who you are right now. And I loved who you were before, and I'll love whoever you become. Marry me." She said yes. And that night, in his bed where they'd finally let themselves fall completely into each other, her memory came back. It happened during a moment of perfect intimacy, when Sarah's guard was completely down and her mind was floating in that space between consciousness and bliss. One moment she was Sarah who loved Marcus. The next she was Sarah Delacroix, investigative journalist, and she remembered everything. The investigation. Following Marcus for weeks. The threatening calls from an unknown number telling her to back off. The night she deliberately stepped in front of his car because the vehicle behind him, a black SUV with no plates, had been gaining speed, and she'd realized with horror that it wasn't trying to follow Marcus. It was trying to kill him. She'd saved his life by sacrificing herself. And then she'd woken up with no memory, in the care of the man she'd been investigating. The man she'd been wrong about. The man who'd turned out to be innocent while his partner, Elias Crane, the real architect of the fraud, had orchestrated everything to frame Marcus and had tried to kill them both. Now lying in Marcus's arms, engagement still sparkling on her finger, Sarah had to make a choice. She could tell him she remembered, confess who she'd been, what she'd discovered, that the danger wasn't over because Elias was still out there, still framing Marcus, still protecting his empire of lies. Or she could stay silent, pretend the amnesia remained, keep Marcus safe in ignorance while she figured out how to bring Elias down without putting the man she loved in the crosshairs again. "I know who you are," she whispered against his mouth, making her choice. "I remember everything." The words hung in the air like a detonation. Marcus pulled back, and she watched his face cycle through emotions: shock, fear, guilt, resignation. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Just now. This moment." Sarah sat up, sheet wrapped around her, and saw him preparing for her to leave, to hate him, to call the police. "Marcus, listen to me. I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm." "Sarah. You didn't hit me by accident." The words came fast now, urgent. "I stepped in front of your car deliberately. There was another vehicle behind you. Someone trying to run you off the road. I saved your life, and someone gave me amnesia to make sure I'd never tell you who was really behind the embezzlement." Marcus stared at her. "What? It's Elias Crane, your business partner." I'd been investigating Thorn Industries for 3 months, following the money, and it all led back to him. He's been framing you, Marcus. Setting up accounts in your name, forging your signature, creating a paper trail that makes you look guilty. And when I got too close, he tried to kill us both. No. Marcus was shaking his head, but his eyes said he believed her. Or wanted to. "Elias and we've been friends since college. He wouldn't. He would. And he did." Sarah reached for him, hands on his face, forcing him to look at her. "I have proof. Or I did, before my apartment was ransacked. But I know where he keeps the real records. Offshore servers, cryptocurrency wallets, everything. I was going to publish the story the week after the accident." "Why didn't you tell me? Before, when you could have?" "Because I thought you were guilty too," Sarah said softly. "I thought you were the criminal. And then I got to know you, and I realized I'd been wrong about everything except the love part. That turned out to be real." Marcus pulled her close, and she felt him trembling. "Someone tried to kill us." "Yes. And Elias has been sending me threatening letters, telling me to keep you in the dark. He's been watching us." Sarah's mind was racing now, pieces clicking together. "He probably has surveillance on the penthouse. He knows I remembered the moment it happened." As if summoned by her words, Marcus's phone buzzed on the nightstand. One new message from Elias Crane. "Congratulations on the engagement, brother. We need to talk. Tomorrow 8 a.m., the construction site at Riverside in Maine. Come alone, or I'll make sure Sarah's memory problems become permanent." Sarah and Marcus looked at each other in the dim light of the bedroom, the engagement ring catching the glow of the city outside, and made a decision together. "We're not going alone," Sarah said. "No," Marcus agreed. "We're ending this. Tonight." But that's a story for another video. Because what happened at that construction site, the confrontation with Elias, the revelation of who'd really been behind the accident, and whether love built on secrets and amnesia could survive the harsh light of truth, well, that would change everything Sarah and Marcus thought they knew about justice, redemption, and whether people deserve second chances. The real question is, are you ready to find out? If you're dying to know how this ends, and trust me, the conclusion will blow your mind, make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell turned on. Comment below, Team Marcus or Team Sarah. And tell me, do you think their love can survive this revelation, or was it built on too many lies? Drop your theories in the comments. The wildest guess gets a shout out in the next video. And if you enjoyed this story, share it with someone who loves romance with a twist. This is the kind of story that keeps you up at night thinking, what would I do? Until next time, remember, sometimes the person who hits you with their car might just be the person who saves your life.